Salty Day sweater is complete. My very first test knit is for Sari Nordlund. Such a rite of passage knit. Everything that could have gone wrong at 2020 me needed to be seen. That was a lot. Softest, most beautiful yarn. Having the time of my life knitting this up. Hi cozy friends, and welcome back to the Unraveled podcast. If you are new here, I like to unravel my anxious mind with my cozy hobbies, mostly reading and knitting. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, I hope you will stick around and unravel with me today. If you are not new here, you will notice that the cozy corner is looking a whole lot different right now. We've still got our cozy yarn shelves with the books on it, but I have a new cozy chair and I love it. I think it is so much more welcoming for the room. It's so much cozier to sit in, and it makes for a lot better and cozier of a backdrop. So I'm really happy with this change up, and I hope you love it as well. It is just the perfect reading and knitting chair, so that has made me really happy, and I have been unraveling here a whole lot lately, but unfortunately I haven't been able to knit a whole lot this week. If you saw on Instagram, I have been wearing a wrist brace almost all week because last weekend I actually went to a girls' night sleepover with my friend Mickey, my Aussie knitting bestie, and we knit up a storm. As a mom to a toddler, I do not get uninterrupted knitting time quite like I had at her house. And then we also went on a knitting date the next morning. So I knit just all weekend. I had no limits. I didn't stretch my wrist. I didn't take breaks like I should have. And thanks to that, I did make so much progress on some of my projects. But because of that, I also could not work on them at all this past week. I have been on a knitting ban. This is my first knitting ban I've ever had to go on. And knitting is meant to be self-care, and I should not have done that to myself. And I learned my lesson because it got to a point where I'm now in pain and not able to do the thing that brings me so much comfort. So if you are letting your self-care hobby become something that causes you pain or stress, slow down. Take a break before you are forced to take a break. Before we dive into all of the knitting projects I have made progress on, I would love to hear down below what you've been working on lately and what has been helping you unravel. Since I haven't been able to knit this week, I've been playing a whole lot of Animal Crossing, and it has brought me so much comfort to revisit this cozy game. But the other thing that is not knitting related that has been bringing me so much comfort is the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community designed by creatives for creatives, with thousands of classes in a variety of topics ranging from art to business and everything in between, from beginner to advanced. Skillshare takes a learn by doing approach to teaching. It's an on-demand learning platform so that members can learn at their own pace no matter the skill level. Skillshare classes are taught by industry experts like Saba Tahir, which is one of my favorite authors. I have been taking the creative writing bootcamp. I have always wanted to write a book, and I watch a ton of cozy writers on YouTube, and I'm always brainstorming a few story ideas on the back burner, and I think it can be so intimidating to figure out where to start with a new craft. So Skillshare has really taken away that intimidation, and it has just been so inspiring. So if you are ready to start a new creative journey or expand your skills in your favorite craft, the first 500 of you to click my link in the description will get a full month's free trial of Skillshare. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Okay, I cannot believe we've made it this far in the video and have not yet talked about the second elephant in the room. My Salty Day sweater is complete. I am so in love with it. This is the Salty Day sweater by Kutovakika, and I knit it in Knit Picks Heatherly worsted weight yarn in the color Sea Glass. I think it is so beautiful with this design, and it really is cozy and so oversized. I'm absolutely so happy with the fit of it. I hosted my very first knit along with this sweater, and I am so happy I did. And I hosted this knit along with my friend Haley from Haley's Space. She did a really fun cotton summer version because she lives here in Australia. and it was so cute. She has a whole project vlog, so I highly recommend you go check that out. I honestly never could have imagined how much that KAL group would grow, but it built up such a beautiful community of knitters. This sweater was just so much fun to knit, and I think the majority of us felt that way. The only part that was such a slug was the twisted rib hem on the body. It is such a beautiful feature, but it is so painful to knit, and that is really what took a toll on my wrist. Along with the next project that I'll talk about, which is a very fast-paced test knit timeline, so that was another thing that contributed to my wrist pain. As you can see, I ended up doing the ribbed sleeves as to pattern, even though I had said I was thinking about doing the charted sleeves. The patterns on this sweater are ribbing, lace, and cables. It is just such a beautiful combination of patterns, and it's so potato chippy because you just keep wanting to get to the next section, and it flies off the needles. I had so much fun knitting it and sharing the process with everyone in the chat, and we were all able to encourage each other and share resources for getting through certain hurdles, but it really was an easy breezy knit, and I could definitely see myself knitting this again with a natural fiber. This yarn is a 80% acrylic, 20% merino yarn, and when I purchased it, I definitely had those numbers backwards. I thought it was 80% merino, and once you've started working with some natural fibers, you can definitely tell the difference when you work with synthetic fibers. There's nothing wrong with knitting with synthetic fibers if that is what is accessible and affordable for you, or if that is what works with your skin. But as someone who really enjoys working with natural fibers, I definitely want to get more natural fibers in my wardrobe. So this isn't my favorite piece I've made, even though I absolutely love the design and would knit it again. I was very worried about the color of this sweater. I don't feel like it is my color. I feel like I've been learning a lot about what my color season is lately, and I don't think this fits into it, but it definitely is a fun, bold piece. I think it'll be so good for coastal beachwear on chilly coastal days here in Australia. As I've talked about on this channel, I'm currently living abroad in Australia, so it is spring going on summer here. I had to actually crank my AC before filming this video so that I would even be able to wear this, which is so ridiculous. But I wanted to be able to wear it and show it off for you guys. But after this, it's probably not going to get much wear until about April when it becomes fall here. I did size up a needle to meet gauge on this project. I knit the size medium, I think that is the size 3. I think I ended up with about 22 centimeters or 9-ish inches of positive ease, which got me a bust measurement of 122 centimeters and or 48 inches, which is a really nice, comfortable, oversized fit for me. I do know some people feel like it is way too much, which is totally fair, and I do think a lot of people sized down for this pattern. It was really fun to be in the chat and see how everyone was picking their size, what needles they decided to go with. It was really inspiring to see all the yarn selections. There were people doing summer versions. The Salty Days knit along is coming to a close, but I want to thank everyone who participated and joined or followed along the journey of knitting it. It has been such a pleasure, and seeing all the finished object photos on the hashtag has just filled me with so much joy. I feel like I found so many really cool people through hosting this knit along. If you joined the knit along, I'd love to hear how it went for you, and I definitely plan to host more knit alongs in the future that are a bit more beginner friendly. So let me know down in the comments if that is something you would love to see. The next whip that has been on my needles has been flying off my needles and is such an exciting project. I got accepted for my very first test knit. Here it is. It is the Belle Sebastian pullover by Sari Nordlund. Yes, you heard that right. My very first test knit is for Sari Nordlund. That is absolutely crazy. She is one of my favorite designers, and this is a beautiful all over cable work design, and I got accepted on Halloween and literally ran to my local yarn store. I was doing a lot of research about what yarns were available at my local yarn shops that would match the fiber content of the yarn that Sari used for her sample of this project. The yarn that Sari used was 50% Pima cotton, 35% baby suri, and 15% wool. Kind of an Aran weight yarn, but very fluffy and fuzzy. That was really hard to find near me, but I could not order online. I didn't have time to order a yarn online. I needed to pick something up in person because, as I said, I got accepted on October 31st or Halloween, and I have until November 28th to finish this project. I have to knit the upper body, the collar, and a sleeve. And as you can see, I'm almost there. It is mid-November, and all I have to do is the sleeve. I am well on my way, making amazing progress. I have tried it on since putting the collar on, and it is so soft and divine. Let me tell you about this yarn that I picked. So at one of my local yarn shops, it has Isager yarn. I have never knit with Isager. I have seen it all over Knitstagram, all over KnitTube, and I see it as like a fancy luxury yarn, you know, as someone who, there is so many levels of yarns. I feel like there are affordable craft store yarns, there's middle of the road brands, and like online shops there. But I was able to pick up Isager Soft in the color E0, which is a 56% baby alpaca, 44% Pima cotton with 125 meters per 50 grams. It is an undyed, beautiful, just perfect cream. It is the softest, most beautiful yarn I've ever gotten the pleasure to work with. I feel so honored to be able to test knit for Sari, and I really wanted to invest in this piece even though it was such a spontaneous thing. I think that going forward, I'm not going to be applying to test knits with that close of deadlines. Don't want to always feel the need to go out and splurge on yarn. So I think I'll only do test knits with tight deadlines going forward on projects that I would have the yarn on hand for in my stash. Otherwise, I would only apply for test knits where I would have time to order in an appropriate yarn. This just felt like a very special occasion and situation, and I am, like I said, just so honored. This is such a fun pattern to knit up. I love cables. If you know me, cables just give me the perfect dose of dopamine, and I've just been having the time of my life knitting this up. So I really just kind of went into a hole of working on this and nothing else. And I think I had done all of this in the first 10 days of working on it, because as I said, for the past 5 days, I have not been able to knit. So really just taking it easy now, and I only have one sleeve I have to do before that November 28th deadline, and I will surely meet that. I'm just trying to nurse my wrist back to health before giving that a go. I sized up an entire millimeter on this project. The recommended needle size for this project is 4.5 millimeters, and I am knitting it on a 5.5 millimeter to meet gauge. And that may just be because of my yarn choice, it may be because of my tension. So if you pick up this pattern when it comes out, we're not sure when it will be coming out, but it will be coming out soon. So make sure you are following Sari so that you see when it releases. But if you knit this project, make sure you gauge swatch. Gauge swatch in the cable knit pattern and the moss stitch pattern. So make sure you do a sizable gauge swatch and try a few different needle sizes to meet gauge on this. Now let's talk about my ranunculus. This was such a comfort knit for me. It truly flew off the needles. I don't know if you've even seen this in a podcast yet. Yeah, no, you haven't. You have seen it in a vlog when I cast it on for a bit of a comfort knit. I am buddy knitting this with my friend Mickey from Mickey's Cozy Corner. We cast this on mid-October, and honestly, it just flew off the needles. I think it was like a fever dream. I just couldn't stop working on it. I am on the twisted rib hem. but obviously the combination of working on this twisted rib hem and the one for my salty days was just more than my wrist could take. Also in combination with cranking out that test knit, all the cables on the test knit. I don't think that cables cause me too much pain like the twisted rib, but I was also working on my husband's socks, which we'll talk about here soon. And working with sock yarns can sometimes cause me wrist pain and strain as well. So really just the combination of all these things and not taking breaks, just going from one project to the next that are all very involved. That was a lot. The only thing that made me put this project down before finishing it was my test knit, getting my test knit in. I dropped everything. I truly wasn't working on anything but this test knit until I got to the point of slitting for the sleeves. And then I felt able to work on this a bit more and started on the twisted rib. The Ranunculus is such a rite of passage knit. It is a lacework circular yoke which transitions into a raglan. What makes the Ranunculus so beloved in the knitting community is that it is such a versatile project. You can literally knit it with anything from lace weight to worsted weight yarn. The gauge is 14 stitches in 4 inches, so really open gauge if you're using a smaller yarn. And there's so many different options for it too. So you can do the short sleeve or long sleeve version. You can change the gauge. A lot of people do that. And I am knitting it on a 16 stitches per 4 inches gauge, which the only regret I have with that is that I didn't knit more stockinette rows before beginning my raglan stitches because my raglan is a little shallow. My raglan is pretty high up in my armpit. I do wish I'd realized that before doing the entire body, and I probably would have added some length. I am knitting this with Fibra Natura's Papyrus yarn in the color yellow. It is a beautiful vintage, it has an almost sun bleached look to it, and I'm so happy with this color. I think it will look so good on me. This is one of those choices where like I knew it was my color. So there is a funny story behind this project when it comes to the yarn. If you saw my yarn haul and project plans video, you'd know that I purchased this Bendigo Woolen Mills yarn for my ranunculus. I planned to make a green ranunculus, and my idea was a spring cotton kind of ranunculus, but everything that could have gone wrong with this yarn selection did. I was struggling to meet gauge on it, and honestly, I just don't love the fiber that I chose. When I was shopping for my ranunculus yarn, I know I was looking at their cotton and their merinos, but for some reason, I don't know if it's because I didn't like the colors on those options, I ended up choosing a wool yarn, which is not the vibe I wanted for the spring knit. If you're not aware, cotton is a lot more breathable for a spring or summer knit, whereas wool is a lot more warm and insulating for like winter or fall knitwear. So this just wasn't the right yarn for this project, and I swatched a couple times to try to make it work, and I just was not loving the vibe of it. I will definitely find some cardigan to use that yarn for that will be spring appropriate because it's such a fun spring color, but it was not what I was looking for my ranunculus. So while I was swatching with this green yarn, Knitting for Eve actually posted her ranunculus project vlog, which was so exciting, and she was using Fibra Natura's Papyrus yarn that she got, I believe, in Turkey. So when I was watching it and just loving her yarn, it made me realize like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. I need to get my cotton yarn. So I went to the store thinking I'll find a cotton that will work for this project, and lo and behold, my local yarn shop had Papyrus yarn. My jaw was on the floor. I could not believe it. So obviously I had to get it, and I was obsessed with this yellow color. So I'm really happy that worked out. I feel like everything went wrong so that everything could go right, and it was just meant to be. I did not add the short rows on the front, but I did add them on the back in the yoke. I will say when I try this shirt on, because the raglan is shallow on me, it does kind of come up on my side. As I shared, I am knitting this on a tighter gauge than the pattern suggests, and I am knitting a size 3 or 4. I'll put it on the screen, whichever I am knitting. and that will allow me a positive ease of about 10 centimeters, I believe, which is way less than recommended in the pattern. But I just really like my spring knits to be more tight-fitting. I didn't want like a poncho looking ranunculus. I know that's a cute look on a lot of the sample photos, but it just wasn't what I was going for. And as I said, the ranunculus is so easily adjustable to your liking. So I'm really happy with how I'm growing in my knitting journey to be able to do that kind of necessary yarn math. I do have a project vlog in the works for both of these projects, and I'm really enjoying making my project vlogs. I think it is so much fun to get to watch a project from beginning to end as a viewer of knitting vlogs, but it's also fun for me to be able to seam all of those pieces together. So keep your eye out for that, as that will hopefully be coming soon. All right, let's talk about Mr. Unraveled socks. As you can see, I have completed one of them. When you last saw this sock, I was on the foot, but the leg was shorter than this. And after the last podcast, I had my husband try it on, and I was already 7 inches into the foot, and I realized that it was just too short on him, on his leg. It just wasn't gonna look natural for him. He likes his socks to be longer. So I frogged 7 inches of the foot, I frogged the heel, and I added 2 inches onto the leg before doing the heel again, and then re-knitting the foot. If you can see, this is a ribbed sock on the front and then stockinette all along the back, including the heel. I do partially wish I had done a slip stitch heel for added, reinforcement. I just really liked the look of the stockinette and how the whole back of the sock was stockinette, but I wasn't aware at the time that the slip stitch heel is a bit more secure and prevents your stitches from wearing as quickly. It does plan to wear these in shoes, so I hope that that doesn't become a problem. And here is where I'm at on the second sock. I immediately cast on the second sock to prevent second sock syndrome, and it really does help me defeat that curse. I didn't mention it, but I also did 24 rows of 1x1 rib at the top, and then transitioned to doing 2x2 rib on the front and stockinette on the back. My husband has quite hobbity feet. He passed them right on down to our son. So he has like wide, short feet, and it's been really cool to be able to tailor these to his body and make them fit him perfectly, unlike most of his socks that are store-bought. These are definitely made with love, and I have been enjoying knitting them on my ChowGoo sock knitting needles that I invested in. If you want to hear me talk more about these, I shared them in the last podcast, as well as in my knitting tools I recommend video, which I will have linked up here. But it has made the sock knitting process a lot more pleasant for me. I am knitting this with Cascade Heritage sock yarn in the color Mossy Rock. And this yarn is absolutely divine. It is just so soft. And I'm going to use the scraps of this yarn to make myself some Mudo socks, but I'm only going to do the color work chart on the cuff. I'm not gonna do it all the way down the foot. And I'm just excited to get to knit for myself with this beautiful yarn as well. Our anniversary is the 20th of this month, and I was hoping to have these socks ready for him by then, but I'm just not able to finish them because I cannot put my wrist through sock knitting right now. And if I am able to get back into knitting, I have to finish my test knit. That's a must. So unfortunately, Mr. Unraveled is not going to have his socks by our anniversary, but my friend Mickey is going to come over and play with our son so we can go out on our first date since he was born. My son is 2.5, and my husband and I have literally never been away from him together at the same time. So that's going to be a huge milestone, but it's going to be so great. We're going to go out for a little early dinner so that we are home at bedtime. And it's just going to be very needed for us. I'm really looking forward to it, as scary as it'll be to leave him. Now I'm going to talk about a couple projects I haven't really made progress on, but I still want to share about. My loom sweater by Sari Nordlund is officially in a hibernation mode. I do not have needles on it. I had to steal them for one of my other projects. This one is definitely going to go into the next year with me. I'm not going to be finishing it this year. However, I got a very exciting, sweet message from Young Folk Knits, which I have watched her for so long, since well before I started making knitting videos. So it was such an honor for her to reach out and say, hey, I noticed you're knitting this. Let's kind of share the process. And she had to buy a knitting brace as well after working on all of her color work projects. So we are both letting this one languish a bit while we heal our bodies and our knitting pains. But it is so cool to be able to share in the knitting process with someone who I admire so much in the community. She is actually currently hosting a knit along with Sari Nordlund for Sari's Softly Timeless Knits book. And that knit along is knitting any pattern from Sari's book, which is so cool. I've wanted to get that book for so long. I just have been waiting to spot it in a yarn store here, but I probably should request it so that I'm able to get my hands on it. She's actually doing a giveaway for 2 copies of the book, so make sure you head over to her Instagram for all the details on the knit along as well as that giveaway if it's not already closed. I'm not sure. And I am knitting this in Annette Erickson's Scandi wool in the colors linen and toffee. And the last knitting project I have to share is my Dagmar jacket by petiteknit. This pattern came out on my birthday and I splurged on some Cascade 220, which again is a mid-tier yarn, but for me it felt like a luxury purchase. And I really love this project, but it just is not priority right now, especially with the test knit going on. I finished the back panel and picked up for the right shoulder and have made some progress on it, but again have had to steal the needles off of this one for another project. I feel like, as I did with my Belle Sebastian pullover, I probably could have gone up an entire millimeter on this. I went up 1/2 millimeter, and instead of knitting on 4.5 millimeter, I'm knitting on 5 millimeter. I think I am on gauge, but I do still feel like it's running a bit small, which is very unheard of for me with petite knit patterns. I did size down to a medium instead of doing a large, which is what is recommended for my bust circumference. So I think that's another reason that I'm okay with this one being on hold while I decide whether or not I should have gone up even more. When I first shared this project on the podcast, I think I had knit to about here and frogged the whole thing and then redid it in a 5 millimeter. So I think what I'm going to do is like block what I already have and see how it swatches, and if I'm still too tight, I may just frog this all again, because Petite Knit's also putting out a zipper version of this, and I would honestly love to do that. The modifications I made on this is that I am doing seed stitch inside the diamond instead of pearls, and over here where there's supposed to be seed stitch, I'm doing moss, and I really love the look of the diamonds having seed stitch inside of them, and I really love this pattern and can't wait to pick it back up. And then the last project I have to share that has made no progress and probably will continue to make zero progress on right now is my husband's cardigan that I'm going to be steeking. I'm knitting it in the round because it is an adult man cardigan and I'm not doing that much pearls. I really enjoy working on this project. I had my husband try it on and it actually is fitting exactly how I wanted it to. I am knitting off gauge, so I did a lot of yarn math on this one to make sure it would be the size he wanted. And I used the measurements of his favorite sweater vest to figure out how much positive ease he likes in his garments. And this is measuring exactly how he wanted. So I'm really happy about that. But my goal is to gift this to Mr. Unraveled by his birthday in March, the end of March. So that's also going to be the beginning of fall here in Australia, so it'll be the perfect timing. I obviously still have a lot of knitting to do, a lot of body. This has pockets as well as it's going to need 2 sleeves and a huge ribbed shawl collar. So lots of knitting to do on this, but really loving the yarn I'm using. It is Knit Pick Simply Wool in the color Winnie. It's a gorgeous yarn. It is a very soft wool. It doesn't have a rustic feel to it. So I think it's going to be a really nice office cardigan for him. And I'm so happy to get to make something so special for him. I think it's very much just a process knit for me, and I enjoy working on that one when we are watching something and I just need something easy to stockinette on. But I haven't even been doing that because I, one, am injured, and two, have had so many more pressing projects going on. So since we talk about all things that help us unravel, the next section is all about what I've been reading. If you were just here for the knitting, I want to thank you so much for watching, and now we're going to chat about books. If you've read anything good lately, please let me know down below. I'm always accepting recommendations. I just finished listening to The Life Impossible by Matt Haig. Matt Haig is the author of The Midnight Library, so I loved that book. It was 5 million stars for me, and I tried to not have any expectations going into this one. And I know that his books tend to be very existential and thought-provoking. I borrowed it on Libby, so I had about 14 days to listen to it. And the first 50% I listened to in about a day or two. I was really obsessed. I felt so connected to the story. It is about an older woman who has lost her son and her husband, and she's feeling very, purposeless and a lot of grief. But she inherits a home in Ibiza from an acquaintance from a long time ago that she doesn't feel very close to. So she's like, why did I receive this home? Like, what is this about? Is this an opportunity? Like, should I even go? And when she gets there, a mystery starts to unravel. There's a lot of strange and magical things happening. And I loved it up to that point. And then things started getting stranger and stranger and feeling almost like a fever dream. In this book, she finds enlightenment, and it's just a lot. I really did love the simple moments where Grace is learning to appreciate the present moment. I think that this book was a very thought-provoking, emotional journey for the main character, Grace, and I loved following her story. But I also felt like this book was trying to do a little too much. So after that 50% mark, when it started being about the human experience and human existence, I feel like I was getting a little overwhelmed. The book was telling you what to think a lot of times, a little bit too much exposition and monologue. I feel like this book not only tried to tackle the human existence and experience, but it also was trying to tackle climate change and evil billionaires all at the same time, and it just felt a little contrived. It felt a little bit too much for me. And I really did just value her emotional journey, and I feel like that could have been enough for this story. But this book definitely threw me for a loop, and I just don't think it was necessarily for me. I loved the character building. I just didn't love where the book went. And it started to feel a little bit like a self-help book. So I don't really recommend this new release from Matt Haig, but I do really highly recommend checking out his other books. I think I've only read The Midnight Library, but I've had some of his other books on my TBR for so very long and really want to read them. And as I mentioned earlier, the other thing that's been helping me unravel is Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing this week has brought me so much comfort. I actually have been playing Animal Crossing New Horizons since it first came out in 2020. And at that time, I think it was very much a quarantine comfort for all of us. I built up my island. I would FaceTime my friends and play with them. We'd visit each other's islands. It was so much fun. I love a cozy game. I honestly haven't played the game in probably a couple years now, and I finally picked the game back up. And I decided to reset my island, which if you play Animal Crossing, you know that's a huge deal because you can't have more than one save on any Switch. I finally reset my island, and it allowed me to just fully experience the nostalgia of 2020, which is not a positive nostalgia, but we had those comforts throughout quarantine that really got us through, and I think reliving that is a very healing experience. I'm always talking about reliving your teenage comforts or your childhood comforts to heal that inner child or heal that inner teenager that really needs that validation. And needs to be seen. And I think that 2020 me needed to be seen. Thank you so much for watching and spending your time unraveling with me. Don't forget to check out the link in my description to get a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. For more cozy content, make sure you tap subscribe and check out my Instagram so that we can be friends. And I will be wishing you a very cozy week.